Welcome to Dr Jeffrey Roth's Looking Good and Feeling Great podcast, live from Las Vegas, with his co-host, Darrell Craig Harris.
Hi, folks. This is Dr. Jeffrey Roth, your board-certified plastic surgeon in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we're back with Season 2, if you can stand it, of the podcast. So we're back.
Looking good, feeling great.
That's us.
So we're on episode 2, and today we're going to actually talk about brow lifts, which is an interesting subject. You were giving me, because I actually didn't even know exactly what that entailed myself. So tell us a little about that.
Yes, so brow lift was on my mind. So brow lifts are really sort of interesting because people, when they talk about face and facial surgery, sometimes they say, well, it's a facelift, and they point to everything under the sun.
Right.
Typically, a brow lift is those things which that part of the body which is above your eyebrows or your forehead, also commonly referred to, okay? As opposed to the mid-face lift, which is basically the area next to your nose, or the face lift, which really should be called the lower one-third of your face lift,
because it's all really different regions.
Right, which is the jowls, and then there's the neck lift, which is basically your neck. So today we're talking about brow lifts, and they've been popular, and then a little less popular, and then kind of popular again. And what it is basically it's lifting up your eyebrows, because some folks with age or for whatever reason, the eyebrows will continue to lower and lower and descend.
Right, so you just kind of get the droopy eyes and the tired look.
Exactly,
guess, right?
So tired look. Now, what's really kind of interesting about the brow lift is there are certain options, right? So back in the day, they used to go ahead and make what was called the coronal or crown incision, which basically was from one ear to the other. And that kind of freaked a few people out.
Yeah, we'll call that the Frankenstein.
Et cetera, et cetera. Now, you still make that incision when you're doing big, bad fractures, okay? So you make your incision, you flip the face down, you get to all your fractures, you plate, you screw, you do, bondo, chicken wire, whatever you're doing. And then you go ahead and you put the face back up and away we go, okay? Now, with the brow lifts, some folks, especially men and some women, that have a too big old forehead, okay, or they have a receding hairline and they want to drag the hair, if you want to, a little more forward, you're able to go ahead and take a strip at this point, mobilize things, move it forward a little bit, and that really kind of plays into your hand. So that's really kind of cool when you're able to do that. Okay, so we're talking incision. So that's the coronal or kind of the big incision. Nowadays, we're able to, just like laparoscopic surgery, that's the surgery with a camera.
Less invasive.
Right. Has revolutionized abdominal surgery and GYN surgery and orthopedic surgery. We're able to do that, believe it or not, in the face and mostly the brow, where nowadays you can put one incision up top, that's for the camera, and then you have a couple of incisions on either side. You have a couple of graspers. They look like, Nintendo kind of tools. And then you're able to see where you want to go. You want to open up that space. You want to put the tissue back where you want it, and you can really be pretty exact with it as well.
Right.
So you can say, I like that, but better, okay, and you actually to kind of put it down. And then the next thing is fixation. Okay, well you mobilized it. How are you going to get it to stick? And there's a few ways to do it. And they're all good. It just depends on what you're used to. Some folks will go ahead and take a suture through what's called the outer table or outer part of the skull, and go ahead and then take a bite out of the tissue and put it down that way. What I like are these things called Endotine. That's the company that makes it. Basically, they look like little carpet tacks.
Oh, okay.
And so you go ahead and you fix it, you make it solid, and then it has these little carpet tack areas. And you can, the cool thing about those is you can put the tissue on it, and if you don't like it,
it grabs it.
You take it off. But I'm like, I like that better. Okay, I like carpet tack. And what it is it's basically disposable. It's made out of the same stuff that disposable suture is made out of.
Oh, okay.
Right? And we all know disposable suture is the suture they put underneath the skin to kind of align everything before you do the very top layer. Okay. So this stuff eventually fades away. Now, for a while, you can kind of feel it, but eventually fades away. But by that time, the tissue has solidified itself and has scarred itself in enough that that's where you want it, right? So that's really been kind of neat to be able to do that, because some folks, they say, well, geez, I have heavy eyelids, and they've already done the blepharoplasty. You've already taken off that tissue. And what's really happened is the brows have gotten lower, and so you're able to go ahead and put the brows back. Now, sometimes people will go ahead and do this operation along with other operations, like the blepharoplasties, like the facelifts and neck lifts, and it's kind of goes along with all those things, facial surgeries.
Sure.
The other interesting thing about the brow lift that some folks are able to do is go in and attack the corrugators, right? What's a corrugator? The corrugator muscle is that muscle there that causes the dreaded 11s. Yes.
I know all about that person.
That's right. That people don't like, and that's what you use Botox for, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're in there, you can disrupt those muscles and usually able to kind of smooth out the 11s while you're there. So that's another nice little perk about doing that particular operation. So people usually find it very, very helpful. They really
and
like
we talked about the term facial rejuvenation, and that really plays into that.
Sure. So it's all about putting things back where it used to be, because you don't want to change somebody. And I tell this all the time. Where I think plastic surgeons get in trouble is when they want to change somebody too much, right? So if a Bo Derek walks in, or Raquel Welch, or Sophia Loren, I'm dating myself, right? Right?
But all classic beauties.
Say that, right? So, but I'm talking about the classic beauty, and you can do the measurements, all that stuff. Walk into your office. Some guys get excited and they go, "Oh, I want to change her." No, you don't want to change her. You want to put her back like she stepped out of, 1984.
Like really, it's a freshening up.
A freshening up, right? And so, you're not going to get every single line out, et cetera, nor would you want to. But you basically want them to look freshened up, but not overdone. And then they lie and say, I went to La Costa and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, okay? Or my yoga guru, or, whatever. But having said that, you just want to go ahead and get them, in my opinion, to look really refreshed. And so that, to me, has always been kind of the goal, and not people look plastic or fake.
Yeah, because we had talked about that sort of, and we don't want to pick on Beverly Hills, but sort of the Beverly Hills, maybe a little overdone. Right. That's not the goal. Right?
Oh yeah, no, it happens everywhere. It happens. I'm picking on my Beverly Hills peeps because they can take it.
We love
but that's true. Otherwise, I'm out of the 310. I won't be able to get there anymore. So, but you can make that same thing in Dallas.
Yeah, and we have that in Vegas
Dallas,
too,
Miami,
right?
plenty
Sure.
in Vegas, New York, LA, right? It's everywhere. Give me Akron, Ohio. I mean, people get stuff that's overdone. I love Akron. Go Zips. See, there you go. I'll get phone calls, emails. But having said that, the whole idea is to, in my opinion, make people look natural and well rested and not tired anymore, et cetera. And you want to just put things back and restore things the way they were. And so, again, the brow lift is a tool in our toolbox that we're able to go ahead and do that, along with the facelifts and along with neck lifts.
Because those kind of go, I wouldn't say hand to hand, but like when you have the brow lift, you're often also talking about eyes.
Typically, yes. Yeah. So typically now, sometimes you do brow lifts by themselves. That's fine. But oftentimes, like you said, often it will lend itself, since you're there and you're working on the face, et cetera, already, to mid-face lifts and to your lower 1/3 of the face lifts and to neck lifts, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's part and parcel of what that does. Now, again, like any surgery, you have to be careful with it. You can't do, full contact karate on day 2, et cetera, et cetera. And again, because the face and neck are so well vascularized that you do have to go ahead and kind of calm down a little bit, let the swelling go away a little bit, et cetera, for that.
Yeah, and also you mentioned the 11s, so that's the creases above the nose, I guess, above the bridge of the nose. And we actually dealt with that with myself. And we came in and you did Botox and filler.
Sure.
So do you find is that in that kind of range of procedures, is that also a really common thing to fix?
Sure. So you bring up a really good point in as much as, okay, I have something I don't like. What are my options? And it's my job, I think, to go ahead and look at all the different options, right? So, and I tell patients all the time, I said, look, my head works least invasive to most invasive, right? And so you go with diet and exercise. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Then you go to esthetician stuff, and we have some terrific estheticians, and they do peels and they do all sorts of magical stuff there, and we have great skincare. Everybody says that. I think we really do. And then you get into stuff with sharp pointy objects like Botox and fillers and that sort of stuff. And that, I think, it can be very effective, and I enjoy doing that. And then you get into stuff which is a little bit more permanent, but has a little bit more to it, meaning going to the operating room, et cetera, et cetera. So in your case, for example, the dreaded 11s between the eyes.
I had a Grand Canyon. But.
We went with Bondo and chicken wire. No,
exactly.
So we basically went with the Botox first. Now, again, Botox is medicine that we put in the muscle, stops the muscle from moving so much and mellows things out. In your case, and in cases that we have all the time for fellas, construction workers, that sort of thing, you go with the Botox first and you might knock it down 50, 75%. But some of those folks, women too, but especially fellas, they will go ahead and have real ruts. Okay.
Sure.
So in that case, yes, you would go ahead and put in some filler in there. And that usually works out really kind of well. And it's funny because I have a few guys that come in and, they don't like needles, et cetera, et cetera. But again, we cater to cowards and chickens and we put numbing medicine on, et cetera, et cetera. And they say, well, doc, he says, I really like you and I really like the result. But for about 10, 15 minutes, you're off the credit card list. For 10 to 15 minutes, you're off the Christmas card list.
Right.
Okay. And then after that, then yes, you're definitely on it, et cetera again. So again, with you is we've done the Botox and we've done the filler. And the next, if you came to me and said, that's it, I can't stand it, I want this to be as permanent as I can. What are my options? And the option would be, well, we've done, A and B. Now, I guess we can go to plan C, which would be, okay, let's go ahead and do the brow lift. Let's see if we can get down to the corrugators and take them out. The other interesting thing, which some folks would write about and then read about, is excision of the corrugators through an upper blepharoplasty incision. So they're there for the upper eyelid surgery,
right.
And then some folks are able to go ahead and sneak over and take out some of the corrugators that way. So, and again, plastic surgery, one of the things I love about it is it's always evolving and it's always changing. And I had a professor, Gil Gradinger, who I speak about often. He says, Jeffrey, if you get bored in plastic surgery, you're not reading enough.
Yeah.
Because there's
it's
always something new.
Yeah.
There's always something changing. Some guys are always pushing the envelope. It just, for me, it's amazing to go to these big meetings. Hopefully we'll have big meetings again sooner than later and talk about all these subjects for guys all over the world. So, and again, my favorite part of those meetings is lunch. In as much it's not just the box, chicken sandwich lunch, but usually there's guys at and gals at the table that are from Miami, from New York, from Buenos Aires, from Paris, wherever. And basically then we really exchange ideas. And that for me is really, really fun because you say, well, I did it this way. Oh, no, don't do it that way. I did that for 10 years. Now I'm doing it this way. Well, why? Oh, that's why. So, or what did you think of that last presentation? He says, I thought it was great. No, it stinks. And I'll tell you why, because I was his fellow and he doesn't do it that way anymore. Like, oh, okay. So it's that thing that you're able to really talk to other folks and really learn, so much more.
Do you think, and you mentioned men in terms of the brow lift and facelift, is there's still, I would think there's still a little bit of a stigma about the facelift.
Right.
And that's something we had actually talked about because I think that the facelift, that term, some people, it has a negative connotation.
Sure.
I like the facial rejuvenation.
Right.
But but technically it's
right.
still.
So you can call it whatever you will.
Right.
But you're right. And again, they came with a very, he went Hollywood, he got himself a facelift, et cetera, et cetera, especially in the 70s, 80s, and such. I think that plastic surgeons really have developed and redeveloped the facelift and neck lift for more natural looking results. So you don't look like something crazy or you don't look like something different than you. You're basically, again, trying to get that person back to where he was maybe 10 years ago. I had one guy, music guy, come in. Super nice guy. He was something special in the 80s, okay? And basically he showed me a picture of him in the 80s with like the flock of seagull hair, it's just like that now, the skater boy.
You sure
hair
that wasn't your brother?
And stuff like that. So no, he had the full on, hair band thing. It was awesome. We were all out of our minds.
We have a lot of those guys that actually lived in Vegas.
It was a lot of fun. Everybody. What, you kidding? So I would go see him. They'd all be there. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was
Dr. Dubro's brother, Kevin.
All those guys. And it was really funny because I was going to medical school, so I would leave at 4 in the morning, and he'd be rolling in at 4 in the morning, and the dog was very confused. It's okay, who's coming, who's going, and who's feeding me?
Sure.
But it was a lot of fun. We were all out of our minds, and I still miss parachute pants. I'll go on record to say that. So, but I kind of wear them. I wear scrubs. So how far did I go?
It's just not that far.
How far did I go? not far. Okay. So, but yeah, getting to men and facial surgery, et cetera, again, 10% of the folks that are in our office are men, and that's about a national average. I think a couple things. One is if you can put people back to where they were, but within reason. Again, the 80s guy that came in and he had a picture and he says, "Oh, I want to look like him." I said, "Well, I want to look like him too."
Yeah, exactly.
40 years ago. But I said, no, let's talk like reasonable expectations. And so we got through all of that, and we got to something that he was good with. But another thing about men in the office, when we talk about fillers and we talk about Botox and such, we get a lot of salesmen in the office, and they're 50-year-old, 60-year-old guys.
And they're competing with these young guys.
And they're competing with 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. And they're like, "Hey, Pops, how come you're tired?" And he's like, "Pops," he says, "I outsold you last quarter 2-1. Okay. Right. And they come to me and they say, "Doc, go ahead and spruce me up." And confidence is a big deal. And they tell me, they said, "Look, sales is all about confidence, right?" One. And he says, "I come in here and I feel more confident and I go and sell more stuff, okay, whether it's timeshare, whether it's cars, whether, whatever, okay, whatever." And they said, "Yeah, no, my return on investment for you, Doc, is like 2-1. I'm like, "Okay, as long as I'm in the black."
Yeah. It does make sense though, because people, and we're sort of a youth culture, and now we have we talked about that before, the stuff like Instagram and all that. It's very photo driven, right. And they're out there, that's representing their business, that they're literally the face of their business,
right? So and especially now, so many people are making pivots into different businesses, and some people are going into sales again, whether it's real estate, whether it's cleaning things. Whether there's so many folks, and we've seen that in our patient population, is so many people are making the pivots now, and some of them are wildly successful, and it took a pandemic for them to go ahead and really say, "All right,
and
that's
people
it.
Are really moving, like you
I'm
mentioned,
going to do it."
You mentioned Zoom and live streaming, and so these things, that a lot of stuff you may not normally notice on your face, all of a sudden you're looking at yourself on camera
for 8 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot, is people are forced to look at themselves 8 hours a day, and they're starting to pick themselves apart. Now, the corollary to that is I'm the guy that says no. So if people come in all the time, "Look, I don't like this," I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. We can do 1, 2, and 3, but we can't do 4, 5, and 6. And so they're like, "Oh, okay, really?" And again, it's up to a guy like me to say, "All right, well, how can we get from point A to point B?" And sometimes you can't, or sometimes it would take act of Congress to really go ahead and do that. But that's why they come in, is to get evaluated and then see what their options are. So again, getting back to you is basically, "Okay, Doc, I have a couple lines I don't like. What are my options?" And again, we go from least invasive to most invasive. And all of them can be good options in the right hands and for the right person. But some folks are like, "Well, geez, I don't have the time off. I don't have, people to help me. Let's go do the lesser one first now, and then give me a little bit of time, and I'll come back for the surgical option." And that's fine. I'm not going anyplace.
Yeah. So. And the Juvederm and the filler, I should say, and Botox. I mean, there's really no recovery time, essentially.
Yeah. So and those are just tools in your toolbox. So again, whether it's a brow lift, which we like doing, and again, it's not for everybody. It's for that certain segment of that population that would need it. Okay. And whether you want to couple the brow lift with other facial lifts or facial augmentations, that's all great too. The whole idea is to find out what the goals are, and then see if you can reach those goals depending on the person. And we talked about this in podcasts before, is what's their skin like? How big a tug is it going to be? Are they a smoker? What other comorbid issues do they have? Do they have a heart problem? Are they diabetic? Are they on steroids? Are they on medicines because they have a kidney transplant, and so on purpose they're knocking the immune system down. So those are all things that we got to talk about before any sort of operation.
Yeah, because I mean that's definitely going to affect the outcome ultimately, right?
So, and brow lift. The other thing is too is you have to really tell people this. No, this is really an operation, because there was a friend of mine who is out of town. He told me about one of his friend's patients. How many firewalls can I make between that? it basically that got a brow lift, and then about 12 hours, 24 hours later, got this frantic phone call. Hey, I look like Brainiac, what's going on? And so he came in, and he had a hematoma. He had sprung a leak, which happens.
Right.
And they said, well, okay, let's go back to the operating room. We'll figure this all out, and everything will be fine. I said, but what were you doing? He says, well, maybe it was the 100 push-ups that we did. And you went to, what?
Yeah.
And so, well, yeah, that'll probably do it. Yeah. So,
how big of an issue is that when you give? I know, because obviously you give very specific instructions about aftercare.
Oh, sure.
And how big of an issue is that, where people don't follow your instructions and then that cause problems
every day? Every day. So no, a couple points on that is we've had patients. I mean, we've been here 18 years, right? So we've had patients come a couple times, before they had babies, after they've had babies, et cetera, gain weight, lose weight, et cetera. And we've had folks that come by for redos and that sort of thing. And she says, it's mostly she, plenty of he's too, but it says, I wish I listened to you the first time.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was young. I was I was running around. And so the scar is a little bit bigger than I wanted. So now the status post 2 kids, et cetera, et cetera. And so now they're coming back for the removal replacement, and lift. And they say, okay, now I'm really going to go ahead and listen to you, because I really want to go ahead and make this the best I can.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, et cetera. But no, we go over everything. There's visual learners, and so we have the book, and we have stuff on our website. So there's a visual. We also have the folks that learn by listening, and so we tell them and all that, and we do our very best. I think one of our things is education, but folks will not get it all, so that's why we repeat it, and we're always as close as a phone. I continually tell folks all the time that don't hesitate to call. We're always close to the phone.
Yeah, because communication is really key, right?
Well, they've done the study, and most people in a doctor's office take away about 30% of what the doctor said.
Sure.
Because the white coat walks in, everybody gets a little nervous, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, too, is if you say the word cancer, they're done. They shut down.
Right.
So you say, okay, we'll be here, and you're going to get.
Yeah, it's a big scary word.
Yeah. Well, so your brain hits the short circuit, right? At which all of us would do, right? Mm-hmm. And so then if you start getting into, okay, well, you're going to have chemo 3 times a week, and you forget it. You lost it. You better write it down, because they ain't hearing it. Mm-hmm. And it happens to anybody. I mean, doctors getting that news, they shut down. They don't hear what's happening.
And we talked about this in the last episode, but how important is communication? I mean, obviously we're talking about the brow lift and that kind of thing, but in general, how important is communication in plastic surgery with the patients?
Well, for me, it's absolutely critical. One is you have to know what the patient really wants, and that's why I sit down and I listen and I talk. I do more listening than talking, I hope. Because I really want to listen to and hear the why that they're doing this, and then I also want to hear what they have going on in their world too. In as much as, well, I got 5 kids, all 2 of them are in diapers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, well, you're going to need help. Oh, I don't have anybody. Okay, whoa. So, and I tell this all the time. You got to set up your universe so that you're going to be successful. Okay?
Right. And for the recovery time, it's going to be required.
Exactly right. So, and we tell about recovery. We tell them they're going to hurt, but they're going to get, pain medicine. We tell them that, but we also tell them that we're here. And we tell them that, this is the first time you play this game, but we play this game thousands of times before.
Yeah, you know how that goes.
Right. So by all means is, however we can facilitate them getting a good result. I see people a lot after surgeries. I typically will see them on day 3 and day 7 and 3 weeks and 6 weeks and blah, blah, blah. I see people for years. So, and we see people.
But that's
even
why
after,
you have a lot of people coming back to you. Right?
Yes. So yeah, and again, you have these consultants. Well, that's not efficient, doc. Well, yeah, okay, but a lot of times, a lot of these patients become friends, and I do want to hear from them, and I do want to talk.
You're a normal. Even though you're a doctor, you're a human. You care about you care about their outcome, and
right. So I try. There's a couple of patients that I have that I've seen for 2 or 3 years. Their stitches have been out for 2 years, but I keep having them come back because we keep checking in, et cetera, to make sure that their gestalt, their world is okay.
Yeah. Ultimately too, that is good business. I mean, it's you care about them personally, but also letting them know that you care about them as a client.
Sure. Yeah. So and again, thankfully, a lot of our patients become friends, which are great because, yes, and to your point is there's no better referral, if you will, of somebody that had a good outcome, et cetera. So, and no bigger compliment than a family member, coming in, or their best friend, or et cetera. So, so for that, it's important to listen. It's important to then go back and forth of, okay, well, this is my plan. Do you think we can execute this plan or not? Because it would be the best plan in the world, but if they say, Doc, I can't stop smoking. Doc, I'm going through this. Doc, I got 2 in diapers. Then we're like, well, okay, we may have to change that plan. And that's okay, but you got to know about it. And the only way you know about it, if you stop a half a second and listen to the patient.
What are some of the biggest culprits in terms of the face and skin? What are the biggest culprits that you think that cause a tired look, that cause skin issues on the face?
Sure.
Some of them are obvious, but
right. So smoking, number one. For any plastic surgeon, smoking. One, it's a vasoconstrictor, so you don't get the blood flow where you need it. Smokers, really, skin is like night and day. And then anything that needs a lift, which means it needs a little tension, whether it's facelifts, breast lifts, tummy tucks, if you're a smoker, it's going to fall apart.
Oh, interesting.
So, and we have plenty of, scared straight photos to kind of show you that sort of thing.
Is that again because of the vascular issue?
It's about the vascular issue. Yeah. It's about vasoconstriction and not getting the blood flow where it is. Sun also, and again, in Las Vegas, we've all been brutalized by the sun over years and years. And you can really see it in the operating room when you have a gal come in, and the skin around where the swimsuit line is pristine. Looks great. Looks like a 20-year-old's.
Right.
Everything else around it looks like a 70-year-old's because it's just been clobbered with the skin, with the sun, for so long. And so really, it's really night and day, literally right there in front of you, of what has been covered for years and what has not been covered for years.
And you actually have developed recently, and we talked about that before, but you developed a skincare product.
Yes. So we, I think, have the best skin stuff out there. I know everybody says that, and you can't say best anymore. Yeah. But you can say second to none, so I'll say second to none. And the skincare line we have, Environ line, I love it. It's out of South Africa. It's terrific, and the science is so good behind it. And the packaging, because of the science, because they package it so that you don't get UV light in it. Okay. And then I've waited 18 years to come out with a sunscreen. And the sunscreen we like is zinc-based and titanium-based, so it's like a shield as opposed to the chemical-based, because you really would rather not have chemicals on the skin. And I have a little one, and so I don't want to put chemicals on the little one's skin, if I can help it. And so the chemical ones are more like a sponge. The UV light comes in and kind of sponges it, and it kind of changes the chemical nature of it. That's fine, and especially that's the only thing we had for years and years and years. And so the stuff that we have is more the titanium or zinc-based. So you remember the surfers with the zinc oxide on the nose, right?
The white nose.
The white nose, right? And then they put color in it, and so the guys would out there like war paint, which was a lot of fun. And now it's clear, so it's much better than it used to be. So I guess I'm dating myself from the 80s with the war paint and the jams, right?
The West Coast.
Yes. So the stuff we have, I really like because I think that it's user friendly. I think it basically shields you from the UV light. So for all of that, that's what we have going on with there. So, and again, that's, I think, important post-surgery as well, is to keep people out of the sun, because UV light is the enemy of good wound healing as well.
Oh, okay.
Because UV light, one, doesn't do good things for the wound, but 2, it can make the wounds turn darker because the melanin is really kind of all jazzed up with a wound anyways.
Right, your body is kind of adjusting.
And then you hit it with UV light and things get darker as well. So and then, of course, just living a regular, we're talking back to the skin thing, is, again, UV light's bad. I mean, you have, a little for your pineal gland. Okay, fine. A little is okay. A lot is bad. Smoking is bad. And then, diet and exercise is always, drink a lot of water. You got to have hydration, especially here in the desert.
Live in the desert.
And all that. And then, the hard drinking, hard smoking guys, they tend to have, rough skin. The folks that have been out in the elements a lot, they tend to have rough skin. So it depends. Some people's medicines will do that to you. Some of the people that are on chronic steroids for one reason or another can do that too. So there's lots of things and your skin is your biggest organ in your body, and you can really kind of see health and not health through the skin as well.
Yeah, and people kind of some people. I mean, it only becomes evident when it's almost too late. Right.
That's so that's why I'm all about prevention. I'm all about the skincare, and it's cruelty friendly. It's user friendly. It's non-comedogenic. It's everything that you wanted. I've been waiting 18 years to put this out. So that's number one. Also, we thankfully now here in Las Vegas are requiring the construction guys to have big hats and to have protective clothing down to their wrists and all that, because back in the day, these guys would go ahead and get their first good sunburn to get them all set up for the rest of the summer. Yeah. It was horrible, and these guys are just getting.
And they end up now they're having to have skincare.
It looks
cancer
like,
issues.
Looks like leather. And again, I have a little one, and her swimsuit looks like a burqa, right? It goes from the neck to the wrist down to the ankle, and it's pink and it's cute. It's got a unicorn and a little dolphin, and all that. And I said, well, she'll thank me when she's 30.
That's true.
Because what we've seen a lot of, if you ask some of the dermatology guys, especially, is the folks that have had a lot of skin cancer stuff like that. If you go back long enough in the history, is they had a few real bad sunburns as children.
So
if we cannot have that happen, that would be terrific. Because and again, stay out of the UV light booths and stuff.
Yeah, and we have, as you mentioned, living in Vegas, we have a unique situation, or really even, West Coast, because we're very, tied into the beach culture and all that. And that do you see like specific, really West Coast specific situations here?
Oh, sure. When I've lived on both coasts, and usually the folks up in New England that don't see a lot of sun and that have always been modest and covering themselves up, et cetera, usually their skin is really good. Yeah. It's great because again, you don't get a whole lot of sun. You get 3 months of sun, right?
If you're lucky, yeah.
If you're right, and then you're usually all you're all kind of bound up and you have lots of the sweaters, and on top of a sweater, a t-shirt on top of that is a big old coat. So those folks, typically the skin looks really good. Yeah, you get down to, again,
Miami,
where not only is it really sunny, but people like running around with no clothes on, and so getting a lot of sunshine
closer to the equator.
All of it. Those folks tend to have much rougher skin. So it's really apparent when you start looking at that.
What's we mentioned we're talking about regions and right there even with that. And what are some of the most common? I know Brazil seems to be a really active place for plastic surgery.
Oh yeah.
So what would be like regionally, like for them? It's I guess a lot of breast jobs and
sure. We can do a whole hour on what is beauty and then what is that particular areas of beauty, right? So for example, Brazil's always been big plastic surgery. Brazil used to have like bigger butts and smaller tops, and then Baywatch happened. And then Playboy started going down there, and then all of a sudden, everybody was getting, breast work down there. Argentina also very big into plastic surgery, and then in Brazil, actually for a while there was Dr. Pitenge, the late Dr. Pitenge, who was a big facelift guy, and he had actually his own island, and you would go down there and you'd spend time on his island after you got your facelift, et cetera. So yeah, he was really phenomenal.
Yeah, because there's people all over the world that go to Brazil for that.
So for that, Argentina, huge. One that's off the charts right now is South Korea.
Interesting.
Absolutely off the charts
Wow.
as far as plastic surgery goes. They love it there. They up until the pandemic, their economic system was really, really rolling, and they love the plastic surgery. And there's a certain look, and it's really because it's funny because you start looking around, and if you look at South Korea beauty contests, these girls look really kind of the same.
That's interesting, right? And what we consider attractive in certain cultures,
right? And by I mean, very typical, same kind of nose, same kind of jawline, cheek lines. So it's that part is really sort of interesting, and that's like a whole new world.
Yeah. And do you think do a lot of those doctors? Because I lived in Tokyo, and a lot of the doctors I actually saw in Tokyo studied in the States.
Sure.
Is that common? Do you think for plastic surgery around the world?
Yes. So yeah, I think that. I think that there's beauty everywhere, and I think that there was, I think with Ellerberger, there was a few folks that were trying to quantify it by measurements.
Because there's actually a mathematical
right.
code.
They were looking for who's the perfect face, right? So who's the perfect face, and by measurements and stuff like that. And they went through all of the movie stars and stuff like that. And I thought he came up with. For Caucasian, etc. Was it Susan Lucci who was I think that he came up with.
Right.
But having said that, yeah, there's certain elements of beauty that I think are universal. But having said that, sometimes things change. I mean, in the 70s, everybody wanted to be a size 0. Everybody wanted to be twiggy, et cetera, et cetera. Lately, we're getting through the Kardashians.
It's fashion.
Right. And so, fashion, because skinny ties, wide ties, all that, bell bottoms, not bell bottoms, all that kind of stuff.
I miss bell bottoms.
So, right. So having said that but there are some things that you really kind of, don't, violate. And whether it's eye surgery or face surgery or other things. And the other thing too is to really kind of be reasonable and, in my opinion, be proportionate, and then choose the aesthetic that you like, but knowing that there may be a price to pay. For example, girls that come in and say, "Hey doc, I want, size G breasts." Okay. So what we do is, again, we say, listen, why? Okay, where's the why? All right. And then we say, all right, let's take a look at you. Oh, well, you're 90 pounds. Okay, we're not going to be able to get there because we don't have enough skin. Or we have to know that there's going to be a price to pay. At some point, you're going to have your skin stretched out, and at some point, you're going to try to reduce them. And at that point, we may have to do a lift and and all that.
Yeah, you may create some bigger problems.
Right. So we try to, at least as much as you can, predict the future and say, okay, this is what you're getting into, and really getting to your point, educate the patient of, all right, well, this is typically what happens in something like this. And, if this is what you want to sign up for, okay, we'll talk about how to do that. But again, in my job, I like to think, is to educate the patient as to what's possible with their own body habitus, because people aren't made out of skin. People are made out of skin. They're not made out of wood or clay. And so there's some limits.
And things are always changing.
And things are always, well, yeah, how is it going to age? And it may look great on opening night, but given a couple babies or given menopause and that kind of thing. And this just came up a couple of meetings ago, a guy by the name of Dr. Val Lambros, who's great. And he said that he actually took 10 cc's of fat out of each side of a patient's face. And there was about 200 plastic surgeons in the room. We all kind of went, ugh. And he said, yeah, no kidding, because 10 cc's on it's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And he says, yeah, and this is mostly the East Coast guys, and not to slam the East Coast guys, but because he says, guys, you guys are putting a lot of fat in faces, and they look great, okay? But as you got to think a little bit about how this is going to age. And again, they have a couple of kids, or they hit menopause, and all of a sudden they look like the Macy's Day Parade.
Right.
And so then they're coming back to kind of get that stuff out. So again, not that we can predict the future. If I could, I'd be at the sports book. But you can kind of see where this stuff is going, and just to educate the patient of, is this what you're signing up for?
What's your best advice to people who have not had plastic surgery? I mean, not only for face, but just in general. What's your best advice to them when they go to see a plastic surgeon for the very first time?
Sure. Well, first of all is do your homework, and by that, you can ask your family practice physician. A good place to start is the website for ASPS, which is the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. Another one is ASAPS, which is the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons. Those are all board-certified plastic surgeons. They've been through the ringer, et cetera, et cetera. That's a good thing. I would go ahead and my office manager hates when I see this, is go see 3 board-certified plastic surgeons, and because you're going to be dealing with him or her, you're going to be dealing with their office staff.
There's
they're going to be dealing with
personalities.
and there's different personalities, and some people click with other people, and that's great. Okay, that's why there's so many different folks. And then they come with questions. It's okay to ask questions. The interesting thing about plastic surgery is the patient is the boss. Okay, because they can go anywhere. Okay, it's not a gunshot wound, or it's not cancer, or they got to go fast, right? So they get to interview the doc more than the doc is interviewing the patient.
Yeah, they can take their time, and
they can go somewhere. And guess what? Is I've seen patients twice. I've seen patients come back 3 times, and because they have questions, and that's okay. So ask questions, and make sure that your questions get answered, and make sure you're able to get follow up, and that's all important. But I think board certification is key, and I think getting your questions answered is key, and then you're able to make a decent decision based on data.
Yeah, and we're going to cover some more about the board certification. That's something we've personally talked about a lot, and we'll get into that maybe in the next episode, and the difference between board certified and non-board certified.
Sure,
and there is a big difference. So
yes.
How can people find you if they want to contact you for consultations? And we're based in Las Vegas.
By all means. So we're here in Las Vegas, but we get people from everywhere. On the website is kind of our big information source, and there you can learn all about the different procedures, etc., and the office, etc. And that is www.jjrothmd, so jjrothmd.com, and then we're all over social media as well. But check out the website and see if you can get your questions answered. And if not, call us. We're always available. We're always close to the phone.
Yeah, and our social media on Facebook and on Instagram is look for Las Vegas Plastic Surgery, Dr. Roth, and we're easy to find. And if you have questions and topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know, because we want to know that.
Absolutely. So if there's questions, and there always is, call. So and we're happy to go ahead and answer questions, both in the office or on air, because if you have that question, somebody else probably has that question.
Exactly.
And we get that a lot. And because when I go speaking, back when I used to speak in front of people where you can gather, I would make a small presentation, but then the question and answer part was always the most fun. And most people would say, "Oh, I was going to ask that question, but I was shy."
And you can actually learn a lot, what they're concerned about, what they're interested in.
So that part's always the fun part.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And also, we'll have Dr. Roth's information, social media links, and website links. All that is going to be in the podcast description. So please check that out below the opening page of the podcast. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
And great. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. For further information, please visit the podcast website link for Dr. Jeffrey Roth. See you next time.